Hi there. I'm Brian Lepire, and I'm with Salem Film Fest. I'm talking today with Poull Brien, director of Charles Bradley's Soul of America. Uh, Charles Bradley's Soul of America captures the story of a late-to-rise soul singer who's had an amazing past few years on the pop music and culture scene. So, I guess my first question, pal, is how did you get involved with Charles Bradley, the 62-year-old soul singer that's kind of shot up the charts and is playing every festival that you can think of these days?
Right. So, my executive producer is a buddy of mine, and he had all this neo soul music that he was listening to, and off of some of it off of an LA soul blog, and he had found this. He played me a ton of music when in the summer of 2010 I was out in Colorado, and I was working on a script, and it was like a year and a half into it, and it was not really going so well, and so I was kind of just, to set the stage for it, I was just sort of like, well, I'll just open myself up to whatever opportunities arise and see what, the world wants to bring my way. And so Alex Bruff played me all these neo soul tunes, and so I was listening to like some Sharon Jones and some Black Joe Lewis, and then Charles Bradley came on, and I was like, what is that? I just felt this instant connection to the song was "The World Is Going Up in Flames," and I just felt like I was like, wow, that just hit me. And so I went back and I asked the record label if I could do a music video for Charles for the song, and through like one string of fortuitous events after another, that came to fruition. Fast forward to, a couple months later, and we're in the worst parts of Brooklyn where Charles grew up, shooting his music video, learning about Charles, seeing his personality, and we find out that, oh yeah, this guy's got a record coming out. So none of his music was really out except for, it had been sold on 45s as singles, and so some people had posted, some clips of it on YouTube or whatever, but literally that was just a record spinning in circles. So that's kind of how I started out the music video as well. It's kind of like a little reference to that. But basically, my producer at the end of that shoot was like, we should totally do a little short. I'll fund it. You direct it. We'll just do a show that Charles has coming up. So we started shooting that, and it was like obvious right off the bat that to both of us that we needed to make it a feature. So we kept shooting him through his album release up till the point where he took off on his European tour, edited for 6-8 months, and did a few pickup shoots, and then we got lucky, really lucky, because there's a lot of people at this festival, and at a lot of the festivals that I've been going to have these amazing documentaries that they've been working on for years and years and years. Some cases I met a guy at Silverdocs that had been working on his doc for 11 years, and this was one of these projects where inside of a few months we were able to shoot almost 95% of what you see in the final film. So long story short, it was just really this incredible opportunity that just came from, a decision that I'd made to really just kind of see what was out there and open myself up to new possibilities.
Well, you mentioned that Charles Bradley is a personality. He's quite a personality. If you haven't had a chance to hear his music or see him live or see the film yet, he's quite a personality. How would you describe your first meeting with Charles, and how would you characterize him to somebody that doesn't know who Charles Bradley is?
Cool, right? So my first meeting with Charles was the music video, the day we shot. And so literally I had no communication with him whatsoever. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know anything until, we get on set in the middle of Brooklyn, and then, actually we started at the rooftop of Dunham Records, where that's Charles's record label. And so, it was my first real impression of him, because we were racing around and we were shooting, and it was dark still, and it was like dawn, and we had him on the roof doing all this crazy stuff. But my first impression of him really kind of came throughout the day, like, and particularly when I had him singing on the subway, because this was, we had no money to shoot this music video, and my impression of him was just like, I mean, I made him sing, like, belt his lyrics out, and there was like a little bit of initial resistance to do that on the subway. Yeah. But the thing about Charles is, and this has really been true about him, like on a much bigger level, is that he wasn't afraid to open up his soul completely to me. Like, so the second I said, Charles, I can't have you lip syncing here. I need you singing your lyrics. I need to see that emotion. Bam, he did it. He was afraid to do it, but he totally did it. And he's like, all right, I'm going to trust this guy. And I feel like that is the way Charles Bradley is to everybody. He's so trusting and so generous with everything that's inside of him and everything that he has. And if I could, say one thing about the guy that you would take away from anybody meeting him, you would know that in a second.
Well, it's pretty evident that you were able to build a trust with him, enter into really intimate personal moments in his life. As a filmmaker, how do you go about doing that? How do you go about capturing the essence of people like this? Or is this just a unique situation where you had the perfect subject who was so willing to participate? Was there ever any pushback on his part or any difficulties that you had in the process to kind of really get him on screen?
No, there wasn't. I mean, Charles was, he allowed us to be there and film anything and everything. There wasn't anything that he held back. And I think that is incredibly unique. Obviously, as a filmmaker, you want that as much as possible. It's really difficult to get that from some people, And so not only do you want that in connection with him when you're talking with him and when you're shooting him, but then you also want to see those moments where those really magic moments kind of are happening, with him in a verite setting, so more than just a confessional. Like, you want to see him with other people doing that. You want to get a sense of a person that way a lot, and so we were lucky enough to get a lot of that as well in just a really short amount of time. So I think the thing that's really unique about Charles is how quickly he opened up and as a result allowed us to shoot this documentary in such a small period of time. That, I think, is incredibly unique. Yeah.
Well, the documentary itself, we're definitely talking about the person. We're definitely talking about Charles. But at the same time, it's a music documentary as well. When you were going into the process, did you have an idea? Did you have like a clear line of demarcation? Or were you going after a music documentary? Or were you going at a character study? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I think that, the story exists because here's a 62-year-old guy putting out his first album. Yeah. That's an incredible story. That's an incredible thing that's happening. And so that's what you're following. But there's so much in that. It's weighted so much because, right, like, who does that? Who puts out their first album at 62? And then when you find a little bit more about Charles, you realize why it's taken him till he's 62 to put this album out. So, and that's all a part of his character and who he is. I mean, so it's kind of both. I don't think you can separate it. I don't think you could say, like, I just want to document the music. Like, why would I, that's his music is him. It's his story. It's his plight. It's his struggle, and that's what people really connect to.
Along with Charles, you interview a lot of people throughout the story, from his record label executives to people from his past and his family members, and about the struggles that he's had throughout his life. Did you ever have any issues getting access to other people that would give you fuller depth into who he was? Any issues getting interviews or having people open up about their experience with Charles? Or is it much the same way?
No, I mean, it certainly wasn't, but I was lucky enough to have his record label and management and everybody on his team, his band, his family. They were all, open arms was how I would describe how they were. But at the same time, you are dealing with, especially with the record label, you're dealing with, people that are really busy, that have, you know, there's other artists that they're working with. There's a lot of stuff going on, and also, you know, they're really in a lot of ways introverted musical type personalities, and they don't want a camera in their face for obvious reasons. You know, they have a process. You get in the way of that process just by being there. So, you know, shooting a lot of that stuff was really challenging, because it was either difficult or impossible to get, and then you just sort of find different ways around it. You know, but it wasn't a case where people were like just flat out like, no, I don't want to be in this documentary. I don't want to talk to you. It was more so just, you know, having this one guy that was so open and available that you're just like, you just realize how special that is by working with, you know, standard people that are like, have, you know, they're more aware of media and the pitfalls of it and whatnot. So it was really lucky, you know, all the way around, the access that we got to everything. And I don't know that that is a repeatable experience, you know, on any level.
Well, you've been bringing this film around, and like we were talking, Charles has taken off. Charles has definitely become a personality that's known in neo soul and independent music right now. And you've been bringing this documentary around. What's the audience reaction been like that you're getting from putting him on screen?
Yeah, that's been really amazing. People, you know, in every screening we get people crying and laughing. And, you know, Charles's story, it's like when he plays, man, the guy, you know, I was trying to explain to somebody earlier what the experience of being at a Charles Bradley show is. And that's, you've got a guy who's tried so hard for so long to do this, and he gets up on stage and like he's just pouring his love out, you know, and he's opening himself completely. And then he goes down into the audience and he's hugging people, and people are crying and he's crying. And, you know, that's kind of been the reaction to a lot of people. You get that, some of that from the movie. I think you get a lot of that. You get a lot of backstory that you wouldn't get at a show. So I think people really respond to a guy that really has had no opportunities, that's really kept, you know, and he's also just an engaging dude. You know, I mean, he's hilarious. You know, I mean, he's like a 5-year-old kid. You put him in front of anything that's exciting, and he goes, his face lights up. You know.
Well, this actually. So I read in a magazine article somewhere that he's like, he won the prize for the most hugs given at Newport Folk Festival or something. Oh, sure. He just jumps into the crowd and he goes crazy. So I'm kind of wondering, have you had the experience of Charles Bradley hug, and how intense is that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody gets that. You hang around with Charles for 2 minutes and you're gonna get that. You know.
He definitely seems the personality.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's incredible. I mean, I'm not used to that much. I'll put it to you this way. Like, Charles was so open that it made me nervous. Like, I'm like, this is like, usually it's just not like that. You know, you're pulling stuff out of people, and Charles is like the opposite.
Well, like, that definitely shows in the film. That definitely gets across his outgoing nature, as well as the trust that was built up between him, the people around him, and you and your crew. I guess my last question for you is, people who go out and see this film, they're bound to have a fun time, but what do you hope they take away from it along with that?
I mean, really, I would just hope that enough people could see this film that it can really have an impact on Charles's life and his career. Because for me, in every way possible, this film, with what it's done up to this point, has satisfied me completely. You know, and at this point, I would just hope that, you know, Charles and his message and his story can continue to influence and satisfy other people, and some of that can come back to him in a really cool way.
Well, Poull Brien, thanks so much for talking with me, and thanks for bringing Charles Bradley, Soul of America, here to Salem. Come to Salem, see the world.